Hey guys, how's everyone doing? I'm Ankana, your social science master teacher at Vedantu, hoping all of you are doing amazing. A very warm welcome to the third session of Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Okay, so let's quickly get started. And so we are today going to discuss about the First World War and the Russian Empire, the February Revolution in Petrograd, after February, and homework question. Of course, that's the most important part. 1 mark homework question, which is very important from your examinations perspective, so make sure you're staying tuned till we discuss that. Okay guys, so if you remember, in the last session we were discussing how the society of Russia at this point was looking like. Just like French Revolution, we were getting a hang of the society of the Russian country, Russian Empire, which is not a country yet. So now we're going to see, like in 1914, the First World War started. What was Russia's role to play in it, and what were certain impacts that it had to go through because it did participate in the World War. So what happened when this World War started? There were two kind of powers. Okay, there were two kind of countries that were fighting, that were participating in the World War. One was Central Powers, which means the countries that were directly involved, that directly had a stake in the World War. The second was basically the Allied powers. What do you mean by allies? Allies are basically friends, right? So these were the countries that were supporting the Central Powers. So Germany, Austria, and Turkey were three countries which were directly, the central powers of the World War I, who were directly participating with their own personal interests. Now they were being supported by France, Britain, and Russia. Later, Italy and Romania also joined. Now Russia over here was fighting against Germany and Austria. Okay, now we're going to talk about how did the scenario look like for Russia during the First World War once they decided to be a part of it. Now initially people were very enthusiastic and kind of excited for their participation, and they had a lot of trust in the Tsar. Okay, they had a lot of trust in Tsar Nicholas II, and that's why they kept rallying around him. They were promoting it, or maybe you can say they were supporting him, but with time it kept on decreasing. It did not retain its momentum right from the beginning. And why did this happen? So there were multiple reasons that the result was, this was the result that it led to. Beginning from the very first one was that Tsar, he was never in the favor of formation of Duma. He was never in the favor of the formation of the parliament. Now he somehow had created a parliament with a lot of conservatives in it, but even that he refused to consult. He was not ready to consult or have a conversation or listen to the parliament that was there in power. Now that started the agitation among the people, because they were not having any more confidence in him, because he was not listening to the parliament, which they really wanted to be there. Now at the same time, he's fighting against, the whole country is fighting against Germany. So naturally the sentiments against Germany was rising up radically, rising up, exponentially. But at this point, the entire royal family, the Tsar, his wife, all of them were losing trust of people, were losing their credibility. And why was this happening? So basically, and we can see how much the anti-German sentiments were present over there. So St. Petersburg is actually a German name. So the name of St. Petersburg was changed to Petrograd, just to show that how much they were against Germany. And at this point, the problem with the royal family was that the queen, Tsarina Alexandra, was actually of Germany. She had German origins. Okay, and now people started thinking that maybe the king is not completely going against the Germany, is not going completely against this enemy, because he is actually related to the country, because the queen is actually related to the country, and he wouldn't want to harm a country where his queen comes from. Now that was one problem. Apart from this, he had a advisor called Rasputin. Okay, he was actually a monk, but he was also his advisor. He was German and he used to advise him so many things. So people started believing that he was actually a poor advisor, and he's also from Germany. So as a total, as together, the royal representation now started becoming very, very unpopular among the people, among the citizens. Okay. Now, as I told you that the World War was, I mean, like they were in full swing. Okay, Russia was not leaving any chance, any opportunity to be a participant in the war. So although people were thinking that they are not, I mean, like the king is not completely going against Germany, he was. It's not like he was being reluctant or he was holding his hand back. No, the army was full on attacking Europe. Okay, it was attacking from the west, it was attacking from the east, right say, left say, all directions they were invading Europe and fighting it. On the western side, you know, the armies were comparatively more successful because there were trenches. And what are trenches? Which are trenches is basically canal. Okay, it's basically, you can say, narrow tunnels. Okay, not canals exactly. They're like narrow tunnels where they would hide in and they would just get up, fight, and then go back into the tunnels. So the casualties over there was very less and they were more successful. However, in the east also they were full swing invading the armies and they were fighting the battles, but they were left with large number of casualties. The damage done was extensive. I mean, like it was so much that it went up to millions of soldiers died. Now, as I told you, the casualties towards west was less, but towards east was more. Why? Because towards west, the soldiers were still able to hide themselves in the trenches, okay, which was basically tunnels in the field. But eastern side, it was huge. Now, this left the people in utter shock. They couldn't come up over it, okay, and they felt so discouraged, so demoralized that the entire country and the whole set of soldiers went in despair. Now, at the same time, nobody trusts the Tsar, nobody trusts the royal family. Now, the soldiers are losing. So, as a result of this, everyone started hating Tsar, and also they started blaming him for the casualties, for the death of the soldiers. See, normally what happens if anything goes wrong, you would normally blame the head of the state. That's how it happens right now. Also, if anything goes wrong, people would start blaming Narendra Modi. However, he may or may not be directly responsible for it, but he owes up. He's being the father of the person who's kind of taking care of everything, responsible head of the nation. That's what happens. And similarly, the monarch at that time, the autocrat, would also had to take the entire blame on him. And the same thing happened with him also, that all the loss, all the soldier, the casualties of the war, the hardships of the war, everything was now being blamed on the Tsar. At the same time, his credibility was already gone because he had a German wife, he had a monk, he had an advisor who was German. So all of this was making him look really, really bad. Now, at this time, as I told you, they fought the war from 1914 to 1917. It's not like they continuously kept on participating in the war, because already by 1917, the amount of casualties was enough. Okay, they had lost like in a bad condition. As I told you, the casualties went up to 7 million, guys. 7 million people had lost their lives. Now, as a result of this, because they realized that they're losing, they started retreating back. Okay, they started moving back into the country from the borders. Now, how was that happening? So this is Europe and this is Russia. Okay, so this is somewhat the you can say the setup. And in the Russian country, the people were invading Europe. Now, once they lost the war, they started retreating back to Russia. The moment they started retreating back, when they kept on moving back, what they did was they started destroying their own buildings and their own crop fields. Now, why were they doing this? You might think like, oh my god, are they stupid or what? Already it's a war time. Why would they destroy their own fields? Was it in the frustration because they lost the war? No. So this was a trick. Okay, this was a plan that they came up with, which necessarily was not turned out for the welfare of the society. It definitely had its downside and was not well thought through. But the army people were just trying to protect their country, protect their people, and they thought that maybe if they're retreating back, the army of the enemy will keep coming along with him. Okay, they will chase them, they will follow them. Now when they're following them, they would need some places to stay, they would need some crops, food to eat. But if they destroy all of that, they wouldn't have anything to survive there to chase them back. And that was the strategy that they owed up to, but they did not really think through that what will happen to the people who were residing in that part, who were residing in the western part of the Russia, which was now being destroyed, the crops and the buildings. So as a result of this, all of these people who were residing in these regions, 3 million refugees had to move to Russia all of a sudden. Now that must have created a lot of burden on the economy, correct? And at this time, we already know that scarcity of food was already there. Population was rapidly increasing. On top of that, 3 million refugees who have no food, no shelter, no family, no money, nothing, have now burdened the economy, okay, which is already kind of declining. It's a wartime, and during wartime, no country is in a very good economical state, right? So at this time, with the refugees coming to the country, scarcity of food, okay, riots happening. Now what happened, bacha? Because of the scarcity of food, people would stand hours and hours during near the ration shops, and then in front of the bread shops, because they would not get bread. Naturally, what happens at this time, people start fighting, and it turned into riots. Shortage of food led, scarcity of food led to riots among the people, and it was not so well managed. Now because of all of these issues and hardships that people were facing, they started blaming the Tsar again and the government, and they completely discredited him, okay. And as I told you, now the soldiers, looking at the whole scenario, did not felt like fighting such a war. They were so demotivated that they were like, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. Now what was happening, not all soldiers were really actively wanted to be a part of the war, right? They did not really want to be into the war. They did not really wanted the war to happen in the first place. These decisions are always made by the leaders of the country, and so it was the Tsar's decision to do this. But still, they were participating because it was their nation's respect that they had to keep intact. But after looking at all of these scenarios, they lost the entire motivation to do this, okay. Now as I told you, the people started hating the Tsar even more. Now, this was more about the societal part. I mean, like more about the economy. We have still not discussed the entire economy. We'll see, because it was not just the people and the food that contributed to that. It was also the industries. Now guys, if you remember, when we started in the previous sessions, we discussed that while industrial revolution is going on in Europe, Russia still was dependent largely on agriculture, which means the industries were existing only in pockets. Very few industries were already there, right? Now even that was suffering like anything. And why was this happening? So one, they were in war, okay. So there was a lack of laborers. There was shortage of laborers. Why? Because all the able bodies, men, okay, everyone who had some strength, who were good by physique, who were strong, were now being sent to army. That's what happens during wars, right? Every young chap who's well built, who can be a part of the army in any capacity, is sent to join the army. As a result of this, all the young men were now gone to join the army, as a result of which there was a shortage of labor. Now people are not only there to work, who will work there? So shortage of labor was one big problem. Another problem was that their supplies were not reaching them. Now why were their supplies not reaching them? So the Baltic Sea was now taken under control by the Germans, as a result of which the people of Russia were cut off from their suppliers. So they were not even receiving the materials which they could, work upon eventually. Railway was breaking down. With all of this war, a lot of infrastructural damage, casualty was also happening. Railway was breaking down. But I told you in the previous session, and even during industrialization, you will see, whenever any country is boosting in terms of economy, in terms of trade and industries, the railway plays a very important role, because it's a very cheaper, very strong networking way, right? It's a method to network to all the parts of the countries in a very cheaper manner, in a very economical manner. Now that was breaking down in 1916, which led to further industries being disabled. At the same time, small workshops and essentials, which used to produce essentials, were also being shut down. Now people, you can imagine the amount of hatred that and agitation that the people was building in the people, okay. Now the way the industrial equipments of the Russian industries degraded It was so rapid that never ever in no other country did this happen. Now that was another shocker. Okay, now all of this further led to the scarcity of food, because there was now unemployment. People were shortage of labor, and all the young men are gone. So maybe the other family members who were dependent on him now just need food, but there is no work. So all of this created the situation really bad. Okay, so this was basically bacha 1914, the first the first world war, and how the Russian Revolution started. Now we will see the actual revolution which happened in February in Petrograd, St. Petersburg, as we just discussed. The name was actually changed because it was a German name. So imagine the kind of hatred people had in their heart, and they're also thinking that the Tsar is supporting them. So imagine how much they would be hating him on top of it, right? So now winter of 1917 was very difficult for Russia. It was one of the most craziest winters. Okay, very cold. But we will now see what was the layout of the city at this time. Okay, how did the city look like? So it was actually divided in two parts. So there was a river that used to flow from the middle of the city called River Neva. Now people who were laborers, people who were working in factories used to live on the right side of the river. However, the people who which were more classy, which were more rich, that's a distribution you will see everywhere. You know, there are always some posh colonies, there are always some posh localities, and at the same time there are middle class and lower localities. There are slums, there are areas where people live in slums, who are low people working who belong to the low strata of the society. So that division is always there in terms of infrastructure, in terms of localities, in terms of settlements in the city as well. And so was there in Russia. So on the right side of the river used to live all the workers of the factories and quarters, and on the left hand side was the Winter Palace, where the Tsar used to live, were the fashionable areas where the other nobilities used to live, the official buildings. All of that was on the left hand side. Okay. Now, in 1917, see, the problem of food shortage and scarcity was already going on, okay? But it was felt more on the right side of the river than on the left side of the river, okay? And at the same time, now as the scarcity of food is there, on top of that, what the Tsar was doing was he closed all of these shops, okay? People are being sent to join the army. At the same time, large supplies of grains were being sent to the army. Okay, now people are dying because of no food. They're fighting to just survive, and the Tsar, because he wants to be a part of the war, is sending large supplies of grains to the armies. How bad would the citizens feel? Now he's fighting for his country, he's fighting for his citizens. That's the idea, what is supposed to be, right? That's supposed to be the idea. But his own citizens are dying, then what use was this war of? So that is also some question that people had in their mind. They were not able to understand, and they were kind of angry with the Tsar because it felt like he was not thinking through everything properly. He was a very bad manager, you could say. He was very bad planner. Now, as I told you, this winter was very cold. Now, it left the entire country with exceptional frost and heavy snow. As a result of this, whatever grains and crops were left also got destroyed. Now, on top of that, see, scarcity of food is already there. Whatever little amount of produce could have been given was also destroyed now. Now, the country is already cut off from its supplies because the Germans have kind of surrounded the country, and they're losing the war. So you can imagine the scenario, how pathetic, how bad the situation would have been. Okay. On top of this, what happened? The Tsar is now thinking of dissolving the Duma. Now this guy is another character, okay? He keeps on coming with such destructive ideas. He's now willing to dissolve the Duma. Now you see, people already don't trust the Tsar. On top of that, they were they were the force who wanted the creation of the parliament, who wanted the creation of the Duma. He had already dissolved it twice. Now the third time, he's again pushing for it in the middle of the war, and he's also not listening to them. Okay, so the people, the elected government, whoever else was there, was now strongly opposing it. But the Tsar was never going to listen. He's a madman somewhere, okay? And that's what led to the revolution. So what happened one day, all of a sudden, on the right side of the river, there was this factory which without any notice was suddenly shut down, okay? this place was suddenly locked out, and when the people go there on 22nd February, they see that this factory is shut down without any intimation to them. Now, of course, they will protest. As a result of this, now if you remember, we discussed that whenever any strike used to happen, despite of all the other laborers, despite of having their own differences, despite of being different, maybe metal worker, maybe a cotton textile worker, being of part of the different club, being part of the different segment in terms of being a laborer or being person who was working in the factory, they would still come together whenever any laborer was being exploited or whenever any strike was happening. The same thing happened. The next day, 50 factories, laborers from 50 factories shut down their factories and came and joined the strike. And the most surprising part was that this strike was majorly for all these groups. Most of the groups was being led by the women. Now on 23rd, the Tsar got a little afraid. Okay, he got a little scared, and he wasn't sure what to do. So he imposed curfew. Now, one thing you should never do when people are mobilizing, when they're coming together as a mob, is force them. Maybe you should have negotiated. Maybe you should have had a conversation or done something in a more polite or subtle manner. But he imposed curfew, and the demonstrators were forced to disperse. But he might have thought that was the stop. He stopped all of them, but that never happened. The next day, the demonstrators came back in more agitation, but even in a bigger crowd, in an even bigger crowd. They were more in number now. Now, what would the Tsar do this time? So now he was supposed to negotiate with them, listen to their demands, but this guy on the next day of this demonstration actually suspends the Duma. Now the people are already agitated. They're already not happy with him. The entire country is suffering from scarcity of food. They're fighting for their basic survival. Okay, they're fighting for the war not to happen, and all of this is going on. On top of this, this guy actually suspends Duma. Okay, now naturally the people would turn even more agitated and even more aggressive. Now these demonstrations, which was now just happening in front of the palace or near the factories, now spread out in the entire part of the city. Every place, every nook and corner, people started demonstrating there. Basically they started protesting, they started demonstrating their dissatisfaction with the government, and they just wanted them to leave. Okay, now the police headquarters were also ransacked. They were attacking everything was happening. Now guys, one thing very interesting was before this, no revolution, or you can say no strike, no such movement was as such led by the women. On February 22nd, it was the first time that the women and such a force were taking up strikes or were demonstrating, protesting, were voicing out their opinions. That is why this day, February 22nd, is now celebrated as International Women's Day, to respect, to celebrate the coming together of the women and their power. Now, as I told you, people were now going everywhere, and they were demonstrating, protesting against the king and the government. And now they came up with slogans, they raised slogans against bread, wages, and these were basically their demands. They just wanted very basic thing. They wanted bread, they wanted wages, better wages, because they were being paid very, very less. However, the economy, the inflation was going higher and higher. They were asking for better working hours. If you remember, we discussed this, that they were working for 10 to 12 hours in the factories or 13 to 15 hours in the workshops where nobody was going to come to look at them. And of course, they were absolutely not happy with the monarchy. They wanted him to leave, and they wanted democracy. Now the Tsar had no other idea in his head. He just decided again to send on cavalry to, suppress them, to open fire on them. So once the police still tried to suppress it, but the second time they refused. They were like, hey, we are not doing this. These are innocent people, and they're asking for something which is very, very legit. As a result of this, some very interesting twist came, guys. The policemen, the whole cavalry, actually refused to fire. They left on their weapons, and they joined the demonstrators. They left the king. So this was basically that was going on at this time. Now after this, what would happen? The king realized that if he keeps on continuing this, he will be maybe like Louis XVI. Over. His story will also be over. So now at this point, before 2nd March, what is happening is now the people are coming together. Okay, all these women who are striking, all these workers who are striking, all these soldiers who are also participating, who are not happy with the idea of war, they all gathered together to form a council. Okay, now they gathered together in the same place where the Duma used to happen, in the parliament. Okay, and they are now calling themselves as Petrograd Soviet. They're saying that we will form the council now and we will see what policies, what rules needs to be sent out. So at this time, a whole delegation, a whole group of people, whoever wanted, a little was working for the government, went and had a conversation with the Tsar and advised him that, sir, if you are going to stay here, you are going to be assassinated, you're going to be killed, you're going to be executed. It's better for you that you abdicate and run away from here. And hence the Tsar abdicated on 2nd March. Okay, after which, of course, the council was already ready, the Soviet was already ready. They understood that now that the king has left, they will have to take over. Okay, so the Soviet leaders and the Duma leaders who were there earlier, they formed a temporary government, because now that the Tsar is gone, it's time of it's a very crucial time, it's a very critical time of crisis, of war, of scarcity of food and so many other things. They immediately formed a temporary government, which they were now calling a provincial government, to run the government, to run the country. Now, when this was formed, the idea was that in future, election would be happened, a permanent government will be elected with universal adult franchise. Now, the first time this was being discussed, guys. Before this, only the people who had property were voting only, and women were never included. So, this was the first time people were saying that with universal adult franchise, we are going to now see. I'm not saying that this was necessarily happening in Russia. This was more of European culture, where people were not allowed to vote, only the people with property were voting. But this was a general trend at that time. Women did not have the voting rights in most part of the country. So that's why I'm saying, and in Russia before this election had only not happened, only monarchs were there. But whatever it was, they were discussing of having an adult franchise, universal adult franchise. Everyone would vote, and then the government would be elected. But that did not happen any soon. Petrograd brought down the monarchy finally in February 1970. Now we will see that after the formation of this provisional government, what happened and how did the society look like after this revolution. But before that, let's quickly talk about your problems. So as you know, we have been talking about this so often, that these are certain issues that you guys are facing, doubts, notes. How do you ask your doubts? When do you clarify your doubts? You're not able to ask all the questions. Maybe you're sending out mails, maybe you're putting in the comments, but still maybe you're being left out. Or maybe once you have asked, but you're coming up with another doubt. Then how do you clarify that now? Doubt and many questions have already happened. So that's definitely a big problem, right? And then what kind of notes, especially in social sciences, I keep on saying this, that we already always struggle in making notes, especially for social sciences, for literature. So where do we get these notes from, which could also save our time, because we have to read so many subjects? How do we make sure that we get good, trustworthy notes which we can completely rely on? Correct? Then of course, tests and assignments, exams are coming, midterms are coming. How do I make sure that I'm prepped up enough? If not this, then board exams are there, not this year, next year, but they are going to be there. Final exams are there, right? Competitive exams. Now how do I prepare for that? Which exam to take, how to take it, what the approach is going to be, choice of schedule, what do I read, when, and then of course choice of language. So all of these problems are going to be solved with a lot of bonuses, unlimited classes. Just in case if you have not been able to attend one of the sessions, you can always have the another sessions which continuously keeps happening through the micro sessions and the crash courses. How awesome is that? Let's say if you've missed the session on the socialism chapter, you can always go back and attend it somewhere. Let's say you've fallen ill and today you don't have to be worried that, oh my god, I have my sessions missing. It's a very important chapter from the perspective of the examination. How can I miss it? Guys, you can always go back to the session after 3 days once you're back in your best of health, right? And then of course in session live performance reports. Now every day when you're preparing, especially in a time like this when you have midterms coming, you keep on wondering like, oh my god, I know I'm prepared, but I'm not sure where do I really stand. These reports is what helps us understanding and getting an understanding of our proper preparation. And then of course personalized attention, that's something all of us long for, don't we? And what do we have to do? Just go and click on this link, vdnt.in/ytpro. After that, you just have to select your grade, your board, CBSE, ICSE, etc., and then read all the details right over there, whatever you want to get to know about it. And then I'm sure after this you won't be able to resist. You will end up hitting the like button, sorry, get subscription button, not the like button. But on that note, if you like this video, do hit the like button, guys. Okay, so as I was saying, that you will end up hitting the get subscription button, after which you will be taken to the option of which kind of Vedantu Pro subscription do you want to have. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. See, if you're not in a state where you're absolutely sure that you want to go ahead with this, go ahead with 1 month, give it a try. But the best would be 6 months. Why? Because you're gonna get the all of the benefits that we were just discussing about. For 6 months, you'll be a part of the family for 6 months. All the sessions, micro sessions, crash courses, assignments, tests, all of it, all of the doubt clearing one-on-one with the master teacher, class teachers, everyone. Not just that, the biggest discount is available over here. Now something that you were getting for 11,499 will now just be available for 9,774. But how will this happen? You just need to apply this one coupon. So guys, you just have to make sure that you're applying the coupon AKEPRO in order to avail this discount when you go on this link. I'll be waiting for you on the live sessions to be a part of it, and I'll be looking forward. Just in case if you decide not to, then also it's okay. We're anyways here for you, right? But of course, that is going to have its own advantages, and you should not miss on it. Trust me. Okay guys, now after this revolution, I mean like after all of that happened in February, then what did the scenario in the country look like? Now that was the most important part, right? Because monarchy is gone. Finally in February, the monarchy in 1970, the monarchy was fallen down, was taken down by the socialists, by the Mensheviks. So, I mean like what was going to happen now? The Soviets did it, right? So, the scenario in the country was now like there was a new provincial government, as we know, temporary government. Now, who did this government comprise of? So, they were mostly the army officials, the landowners, the industrialists, basically the influential people. People with good amount of economical, status, who were the higher end of the society. Now that was going to be a little challenging because they were not going to really understand the problem of the middle and the lower class. And they said that they are going to go ahead in the future and have an election, but that didn't seem to happen any soon. Okay, but who kept on pushing for it? The liberals and the socialists kept on pushing for an elected government, but these guys were not letting it happen any soon. But it's not like they were doing a total, they were being autocrats or they were just being the czar. No, they were doing something good. They had removed the restrictions that was there on having public meetings and associations. They had even let the Soviets form everywhere in the country. So just like this one Soviet, which was formed in St. Petersburg, in Petrograd, was also now being formed everywhere. Okay, it was being formed in every nook and corner of the country. And people started coming up with this in order to form whatever, way to have a proper rule over there. But there was no fixed structure. There was no fixed system of election that was being followed. Now at this time comes back a person from the past, Lenin. Lenin, if you remember, people, was the leader of the Bolsheviks, right? There were two kinds of socialist groups which got divided of the workers' society. One was the Bolsheviks, the other was the Mensheviks, who were now, who basically had the government now. They had formed the government now, but the Bolsheviks were supporting them. But why were they supporting them? So Lenin at this point was not here. Where was he? He was in jail. Why was he put in the jail? Obviously because he was a revolutionary. Everyone who protests, does revolution, all of these fighters are usually kept and put in the jail. Same thing happened with him. So, but in finally April 1917, this guy returned from his exile and he started with his radical movements again. Very, very radical guy, right? Extremes. He would always pick on extremes, right? So he was already against the war. Not just him and the Bolsheviks were already against the war. So he started coming, the moment he came back, he started a followed up conversation based on that. He felt that it was the right time for all of these Soviets to now take control. If you remember, before this, the Bolsheviks used to believe that they should wait for the right time for the revolution. Correct, guys? But the Mensheviks did not believe that. They had already started with their movement, with their protests and whatever little here and there, something or the other. They used to keep going on with. But the Bolsheviks were waiting for the right time, and this, according to Lenin, was the right time for this. He even said that the government, that the party, which was the Bolshevik party, should change their name and call themselves the Communist Party now, in order to show that they were ready and to protect, to show profess their radical ideas. Now, what were these radical ideas? So these radical ideas, bacha, was now known as April Thesis. Now, even his own people, the people of his own Bolshevik party, were not in favor of this. Okay, they were not completely supportive of this initially, only initially. Okay, now let's first see what was the thesis. So, first of all, he said, as we know, they were against war. So, the very first thing he said was that this war needs to have a closure. We need to close this war. We need to end this war. Second very important thing was that the land that was now being owned by the landowners that belonged to the nobility should be redistributed, should be transferred to the peasants who actually work on it. Right? Socialist idea. Okay. And then of course the banks which are a private association entity right now, should be nationalized, should be taken over by the government. Okay. So as I told you, the party got renamed and he was not being supported by his own people, but only initially. Why were these people not supporting him initially? So the moment he came back, the government of the provincial, the establishment of the provincial government had already happened. So the other people of the party were thinking that they should give an opportunity to the provincial government to at least have, do some work, to give them some stability, because they were very new and it was not the correct time for these people to launch a new movement against them. But this Lenin did not agree with this. He kept on going on with his movement, and he eventually slowly became very, very popular. As a result of these developments of events, the people of his own party also now got convinced, and their attitude also changed. Now, what were these events? What were the developments of these events that were happening, which changed the attitude of the people and also made the provincial government very, very insecure, guys? So basically, they had now started forming trade unions. Workers were now forming movements. Okay, the factory committees. The idea of these movements, the idea of these workers coming together, was actually to question the factory workers, owners. Okay, they were now, if you remember, right from the beginning, the demand was very, very simple: better wages, better working hours, and that was still not heard. It's not like the problem was solved. So they again went back to asking for these owners for these changes. So that was the main idea of these unions. Not just that, even the army people were forming soldier committees. And finally, in all Russian Congress of Soviets, some 500 Soviets were sent as representatives. Okay, now the provisional government started realizing that they were losing their grasp on the society. Their influence was decreasing in terms of Lenin, in terms of the Bolsheviks, because they were doing a work which was having, taking its own momentum, and that started scaring them off, because of which they were now trying to suppress this movement. They were now trying to resist these attempts by the workers. But this was only in the city. At the same time, in the countryside, in the villages, the peasants and the socialist revolutionaries were having their own thing going on. Okay, they were having their demands for the redistribution of the land, which was also a point that Lenin had in his April Thesis, if you remember, correct? So now these guys were protesting. They were basically revolutionary. They were having their own movement for the redistribution of the land. And finally, guys, between July to September 1917, they achieved this. They actually seized the land and redistributed it among the peasants, and that was the whole idea, right? Giving what belonged to the workers by taking it from the people who own all the power, who own all the money, from the capitalists. Okay, now with this we come to today's to the end of today's session. In the next class we will see how Lenin changed the society further. Okay, now let's quickly look at the homework question. When did the government suspend the Duma? 25th February, 26th February, 27th February, or 28th February of 1917? Guys, don't forget to put your comments, put your answer not just in the live chat but in the comment box. That's where we pick up your answers from. And if you think this video helped you, don't forget to hit the like button. Also make sure that you're hitting on the that bell icon to subscribe to the channel, because we are going to come very soon with the fourth session of this chapter. So make sure that you are subscribing to the channel so that you get the notification before anyone and you are not going to miss the session. And I will see you guys in the next session. Till then, stay home, stay safe guys, take care, bye bye, have a great day ahead.